We got ahead of the game when we already covered Yom Kippur basics and some of the laws and some of the ideas. We don't have classes after Yom Kippur, so we're going to have to do some laws of the Sukkot this week. And look, in the beginning of chapter 3, Rabbi Melamed divides it into 4 categories: things that must be done in the Sukkah, things that it's a mitzvah to do. I guess that means it's a good thing, but you don't have to. And number 3, mitzvah, things that there's no mitzvah to do in a Sukkah, and things that it's forbidden to do in a Sukkah. Okay, so we'll look at all those, and we'll know how to live. Once we learned how to build a Sukkah, and we have a kosher Sukkah, whether it was with cloth walls or with stone walls, or it's with matting as roofing or branches. We know how big it has to be, and we know how much shade there has to be. So what do you do with the sukkah? How much? So it says in the Torah you should dwell in the sukkah. What is dwelling? Dwelling is, take a look at page 56, chapter 3, section 1. The sages expound, Teishvu Basukot, you're supposed to sit in the sukkah. Teishvu, Lashevet, you know what Lashevet means? So Lashevet, to sit, but wait a minute. What do you call somebody who's settling the land? Nityashvim. Liyashev also means to settle. So it's not just to sit, literally sitting. And so the sages have the tradition that Teishvu Ka'en Taduru. It must be like, akin to how you reside. So what's normally done in the home should be done there, but what's not normally done doesn't have to be there. And let's see the 4 categories. Number 1. Okay, Yosef, want to read for us, please?
Things that must be done in the sukkah. Or should I start?
No, it's great.
Anything one generally does at home, he must do in the sukkah. Thus, one must eat all proper meals, sukkot kebab, and sleep in the sukkah, as a home's primary function is in the place to eat and sleep. 2. It is a mitzvah to do in the sukkah. It is a mitzvah to engage in activities that one sometimes does at home and sometimes elsewhere, like studying Torah, reading books, and chatting with friends in the sukkah. But doing them outside the sukkah is not sinful. Nevertheless, since doing them is a mitzvah, one should try to do them in the sukkah. One who leaves the sukkah without a good reason and does these things at home shows contempt for the mitzvah. This category also includes impromptu eating, akhlat aray. Technically, there is no obligation to eat fixed meals on Chol HaMoed. So it is possible for one to eat only snacks and irregular meals outside the sukkah throughout Chol HaMoed. But if he can eat in the sukkah without difficulty, then eating at home shows contempt for the mitzvah. It's difficult for him to eat in the sukkah, for example, because it is a little cold. Snack at home does not show contempt for the mitzvah. Nevertheless, since eating in the sukkah fills the mitzvah, it is proper to be fastidious and eat there. Some even say that there is a mitzvah to eat 2 seudot kebab with bread in the sukkah each day. Things there is no mitzvah to do in the sukkah. Activities that are always done outside of the home, like praying with the minyan and attending Torah classes, need not to be moved to the sukkah and may be done like kela in the synagogue or Beit HaMidrash. 4 things it is forbidden to do in the sukkah, demeaning things like changing a baby's diaper may not be done in the sukkah.
Okay, so you have the 4 categories. Everybody clear? So give me one example of things that you must do in the sukkah. Eating, good. And give me one example of something that you may, and maybe it would be good to do in the sukkah, but you don't have to. No. Eating and sleeping, we're going to talk about it in greater detail, but sleeping goes together with food. That's usually, you don't sleep on the road, you don't sleep outside your home. So sleeping and eating is part of number one. Shaking lulav, yeah, you don't have to do it in the sukkah. What else? So studying, praying, talking with friends. If you just hanging out, as they say. All right, I don't have a TV, but I used to, watching TV. Some people do that around the world. Right? They watch a movie. So should you watch the movie in your house or in your sukkah? What do you think?
In your
So,
sukkah.
in your sukkah, you don't have to, but it's a mitzvah. You get a mitzvah. Why not? Same 2 hours that you're spending wasting your time. Let's say it's a good movie. It's a kosher movie. It's nothing wrong with it, and it's worthwhile. So you decide you've got kids, whatever it is. You spend the 2 hours. Better do it in sukkah rather than out the sukkah. You get a mitzvah. You don't have to, but that's category number 2. Category number 3, things that you don't really even have to try. This, I think, is closer to the prayers. He said prayers are usually prayed in the synagogue. And what did he say? Torah study as well? What did he say? Classes. Classes are usually in a classroom or in a shul. You don't have to move them into the synagogue if it's into the sukkah if it's not comfortable. They're always done outside the home. So, and by the way, people do that anyways. They try. Some shuls have, like we mentioned, some shuls have a sukkah outside for the community members, for those who don't have their own sukkah. It's a very nice idea. Some use the sukkah for praying. Instead of going to the synagogue where they should be going, they're supposed to pray in a synagogue. They go to the sukkah. Well, you could say it's part of the synagogue, so it's still considered to be, but you don't have to daven in the sukkah. People like to do, because, like you said, it's a Kabbalistic idea of shaking the lulav in the sukkah, but you don't have to, in all means. You wherever you should pray in shul, so you pray with the lulav in shul. And the sukkah is for dwelling. It's not for things that are done usually outside the house. Of course, sometimes we pray inside the house. If you miss a minyan, or if nobody here, of course, misses a minyan, but I'm not so good. I have to pray Mariv late at night, and there's no other minyan in the yishuv. I live in a small town, so if I didn't get there by 9 p.m., there's no later minyan that I know of after 9 p.m. So if I didn't daven earlier, I have to daven at home. I could go to the shul. It is open, and turn on the lights and go there by myself. Maybe I should. It's better to. But it does happen that I pray at home sometimes. You see that the sun is setting, and you're not going to get a minyan. You can't get a minyan, so you pray it at home sometimes. So you can pray at home. You don't have to pray in the sukkah, though. It's not something that's done generally, categorically. All right, let's continue. Yes?
Does a woman also they don't have to as a studying in a sukkah. So if they do, studying.
Women can eat and sleep outside the sukkah as well. They're not obligated. Turn to page 58, please, and read the first paragraph, Stephen. 58.
Oh, okay. Women are not obligated in the mitzvah of the sukkah because it is a time-bound positive commandment. Nevertheless, women fulfill the mitzvah by dwelling in the sukkah. And the custom of Ashkenazi women and some Sephardi women is to recite the bracha of the Shishef Bar Sukkah if they eat in the sukkah. The custom of the most Sephardi women is not to recite the bracha since they have no obligation. Sukkah Rule 589 verse 6. Penine Haraka woman prayer 2:8.
Okay, so that answers your question.
Yeah.
Now, this is a little bit tricky. Hananel, how are you this morning? Good. Hananel, let's say you're not hungry. Do you have to eat in the sukkah? You don't have to eat. So what about the mitzvah of the sukkah? Well, at home, you're supposed to treat the sukkah as your home. At home, if you're not hungry, you don't eat, right? So you don't have to eat. in the sukkah either if you're not hungry. There's only a few exceptions. Who can give me one of the exceptions? When are you obligated to eat a meal? On Yom Tov you have to eat a meal. When else? Shabbat you have to eat a meal. Actually, Yom Tov you have to eat 2 meals. On Shabbat you have to eat 3 meals. But during the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, do you have to eat a meal? Chol HaMoed. It's not Yom Tov and it's not Shabbat, but it's still Sukkot. You don't have to eat a meal either. The simple halacha is, so if you're not hungry, don't eat.
If you are invited,
Yes?
you can do, thank you. You
Sure.
say that you cannot if somebody invites you.
I think in most contexts, if someone invites you, it's an offer. You don't have to receive. You don't have to accept. You can always say no. No, you don't have. Nobody's forcing you to go to someone's house. It depends on the culture. Some people might be offended, but they can't force you to come to their house. If they offer you to come for a meal, you can say no, thank you.
It's not a force, but religious-wise.
Religious-wise, you only have to eat meals on Shabbat and on Yom Tov.
Oh, okay.
Shabbat and Yom Tov, you have a mitzvah to eat meals. And if you don't have a sukkah, so then you need somebody's help. You need to go eat them somewhere else because you have to eat a meal. A meal gets defined by halacha how? Eating bread. Right, eating bread, usually. That's the first option. Lechatchila. Some people say you can set a meal even on wine or some of the other mezonot, other grains, without actually having bread. Maybe cake, you can set a meal on cake. But in any case, we do have a mitzvah to have 2 meals with bread on Yom Tov and on Shabbat. And of course on Sukkot, you have to eat them in the Sukkah. But the rest of the week, there's no mitzvah to have a meal. Except for some special, strict opinion that he brought that some people try to. Because, well, it's Sukkot, so you want to use the Sukkah, so might as well have a meal, because then you'll be obligated. But otherwise, you don't have to. So, if the rest of the week of Sukkot, if you don't want to have bread, so by definition, it's not going to be considered a set meal. You're just going to have fruit and vegetables. You're on a diet, okay? No carbs. For the whole week, you're just going to have fruit, vegetables, maybe some rice, maybe some other grains, but you're not going to have bread. So really, you don't have to eat in the sukkah a whole week. Do you ever have to eat in the sukkah? So we said the Yom Tov meals. But let's say it's raining for all 7 days. We said earlier that if it's raining, we're going to see again that it's considered to be painful, mitzta'er, and you're patur from the sukkah. You're not obligated. So you don't really have to eat the 2 meals in the sukkah on Yom Tov or the 3 meals on Shabbat. If it's raining, so you eat them inside. What can you do? You have to eat the meals because it's Shabbat, but you can't. You're patur from the mitzvah of sukkah. There's only one exception. One exception is first night of Sukkot as a special status. Okay? Good morning, Pinchas. Shalom. So nice to see you. I see your wife pushed you here. Yeah. Those who don't know, this is Pinchas. Pinchas meet Yossi and Idan, Yosef. I don't know. The rest, Hananel you know, right? Hananel you know. And Yisrael you know. Stephen maybe a little bit. Old friends. Good, okay. And we're already learning about Sukkot. I know maybe you were expecting us to be talking about Yom Kippur, but we're ahead of the game. So we're going to read now on page 60. 60. This is a unique feature of the first night. Okay, Yossi, you want to read for us?
The obligation to eat in Sukkot on the first night. There is an important difference between the first night of Sukkot and the rest of the festival. During most of the festival, if one wants to eat a Sudat kebab, he must eat in the Sukkot. But one who wants to eat an Achilat Arei may do so outside the Sukkot.
Okay, stop there. What's Achilat Keva and what's Achilat Arai? He defined the terms earlier, that's why he doesn't say what they are here, but just to be clear, Achila means Le'achol, Achila is eating, right? Achilat Keva or Achilat Arai, it's the construct, so the taf gets added on. What's Keva and what's Arai? Some of you should know this because your passport says on it that you're a Toshav Keva or Toshav Arai. You could be a permanent resident or a temporary resident. Keva is permanent, Arai is temporary. There's different visas, right? B1, B2, I don't know exactly the numbers. So Achilat Keva and Achilat Arai, what could they mean? Keva is permanent? Well, you never really eat permanently. What could it mean? Like we were saying before, a set meal. A meal which is defined as a meal. It's set. It's a proper meal, you could say. Achilat Keva. As opposed to Achilat Arai, which is a snack. Achilat Arai is temporary. Everything's temporary in food. So what's Arai? It means, by the way, you're not sitting down for a meal. You're just having a snack. And we saw earlier, these get defined by whether you're having bread or not. That's a simple definition. So Achilat Keva is with bread, or for any set meal, really. And Achilat Arai is anything less than that. If it's just a minor meal, it's not a proper full meal. So during most of the festival, if one wants to eat a Sudat Keva, he must eat it in the Sukkah. The one who wants to eat an Achilat Arai may do so outside the Sukkah. So usually, can you have, if you're hungry and you're on a tiyul and you see a nice falafel stand, and they don't have they're kosher, but they don't have a Sukkah, can you eat? Well, the way halacha defines a set meal versus a more, what did he say before for temporary? He said impromptu eating. Impromptu eating, the way it defines it is bread. So if you just have the falafel balls in a bag, sometimes I do that. It's cheaper and you don't want, it's not necessarily cheaper, it's just if you don't want all the bread, you just get the falafel balls. The bracha is Borei Adama, if you can see the falafel that's been chopped up, or shahako. I think most people say hadama because that's all it is. It's just chickpeas. It's been ground up, and you can still see sometimes some chickpea. So falafel balls. You make the bracha Borei Adama, and you can have that without a sukkah. That's just a snack. But if you're going to have a proper falafel and bread, I don't care if you're on the way somewhere. I don't care if you're not at home. It doesn't matter. If there's bread, it becomes an achilat keva. It becomes a set meal, a proper meal that you require to have a sukkah. Okay, that's the whole week is like that. You always have to know if you're having bread, you have to have a sukkah. What if you want pizza? Is that a snack or is that permanent? Complicated.
Depends.
It depends, I think, on what you're doing. If you intend it to be your lunch, then it's a set meal. If you intend it just to be a snack. Well, it's mezonot. Mezonot also, maybe you should try to eat in the sukkah, even if it's not a full set meal, because it could turn into a full set meal. Bracha mezonot, we try to avoid that as well outside the sukkah. But we'll see those details in a minute. Let's see, but we're talking about, he's setting up for what's special about the first night. So once again, during most of the festival, read it again, Yossi. During most of the festival,
if one wants to eat a Sudat Keva, he must eat it in the Sukkah. But one who wants to eat an Akilat Arai may do so outside of the Sukkah. However, on the first night of Sukkot, there is an obligation to eat bread in the Sukkah. The obligation is based on a gezerah shavah from the identical language used by the Torah to describe the first night of Sukkot and Pesach, from which the sages derive that just as there is an obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, there too is an obligation to eat bread in the Sukkah on the first night of Sukkot. This also teaches us the importance of the first night of Sukkot, which lays the foundation for the entire festival.
Okay, so did you realize that? Going to skip to the paragraph that starts before beginning to eat bread on the first night.
One should have intent that this eating is to fulfill God's commandment to us to eat in the Sukkah as a commandment of the Exodus and of the clouds of the glory, with which He sheltered us in the wilderness. One should have this intention throughout the festival. But, b'diavad, even if on the first night one discharges his obligation, as long as he knows he fulfills a mitzvah by eating in the Sukkah. Just as we make sure to eat keziyat of matzah, according to all opinions.
Kezayit, that's the size of an olive. Zayit is olive. So kezayit, the size of an olive. The olives, that's the measurement of matzah you have to eat on the first night of Pesach. And then we argue about how much is the volume of an olive. But that's the mitzvah. It gets defined as you have to eat this certain measurement. So too,
we make certain to eat kazayit, or bread, according to all opinions on the first night of Sukkot. Thus, one should eat at least half an egg's bulk of bread. And some are stringent and eat more than a kivitzia. This is an admirable practice.
okay, stop there. And we'll skip to the next paragraph. If it rains.
If it rains on the first night, some say there is no mitzvah to eat a kazayit of bread in the Sukkah, as a mitzayer.
Mitztaer, yeah.
Mitzayer,
One who experiences discomfort.
is exempt from the mitzvah of Sukkah. Others say that on the first night, even a mitzayer must eat a kazayit of bread in the Sukkah. In practice, it is proper to wait an hour or two in hopes that the rain will let up and it will be possible to fulfill the mitzvah according to all. If the rain continues, or if the rain stops with the water dripping from the waterlogged Sukkah, makes it unpleasant to sit in the Sukkah, one should recite Kiddush and Shekhainu on the festival itself. And in the Sukkah, and eat a kazayit of bread to fulfill the mitzvah according to those who maintain that a mitzvayer is obligated to eat in the Sukkah on the first night. However, one should not recite the bracha of the Shev, since some maintain that even on the first night, a mitzvayer has no mitzvah to eat in the Sukkah. If the rain stopped before midnight, and one would still get some enjoyment from eating bread, he should go to the Sukkah, recite Hamotzi and Lishev, and eat bread, thus fulfilling the mitzvah according to those who maintain that the mitzvah is to eat without discomfort.
I grew up in Canada, and this is part of my childhood memories, is that sometimes on Sukkot, the first night of Sukkot, it was pouring rain. Sometimes in Canada it could even snow, but it was raining and we didn't know what to do. We know it's the first night of Sukkot. You're supposed to eat the meal in the Sukkah. So we waited for an hour, sat around, looking to see, does it stop raining? Maybe it'll stop soon. Maybe it'll stop. And as soon as the rain stopped, we right away all went outside. And it was still dripping and wet, but at least it stopped raining. And my father said the Kiddush. And we quickly washed and had some bread. And if the rain stopped, then we continued to have our meal. We had our soup and we had our roast, whatever it was, for Sukkot in the wet, dripping Sukkah. First night is very special. You have to, according to most poskim, you have to wait until the rain stops. And if the rain doesn't stop, he says, you should still, or if the rain stopped just a little bit, you can go in and do the minimum, make kiddush and have a bite to eat, a bite of hamotzi, but maybe not make the bracha of leishev sukkah because you're really not obligated anymore. But some people wait until 2, 3 in the morning. They're waiting to see if the rain stops because they want to eat in the sukkah. The first night is the only time that you really have to eat a meal in the sukkah. If it doesn't stop raining and you can't, so you eat inside. You're patur from the mitzvah. Mitzvah patur from the mitzvah. The only exception is the first night. Some people say even a mitzvah has to sit in the sukkah. But the rest of the week, if it's raining, you eat inside. And you sleep inside. And that's the halacha. Okay, so far so good. Hopefully it won't rain on the first night. The truth is Sukkot is pretty late this year. It's very late this year. And next year it's going to be in October. It's going to be even later because it's a leap year. So who knows if we'll have rain in the Sukkah. Hashem will help us. Okay. The rest of the week we have to understand when do you have to eat in the Sukkah? And here he defines it like I was telling you before. Yeah?
During the Sukkah,
Yes.
if one night it rains, the cold wind,
Yeah.
they cannot sleep in the Sukkah.
If it's raining, you can't sleep in the sukkah. It's you get drenched, you get sick. You're not obligated to sleep there if it's raining. But the first night we try anyways. We try anyways to at least make kiddush and eat some bread. Even if we made kiddush inside because it was raining and we couldn't wait any longer. There's little children. People have to eat and go to sleep. So you made kiddush inside and you ate the meal. And then they're serving ice cream for dessert. And you see the rain stopped. Or even after dessert. You finish the meal, you say Birkat HaMazon, and then the rain stops. So he says, the first night, go have another meal outside in the sukkah.
So may another
Meal.
kiddush?
You don't need kiddush twice. But the hamotzi, you should have a piece of bread in the sukkah on the first night, even if it's at midnight. You realize, you wake up, it's not raining now. Go outside and have a piece of bread in the sukkah. It's only on the first night of Sukkot. It's a special halacha. The rest of the week, if it's raining when you want to eat, so you eat inside. If it stops raining, okay. Now you go sit there and learn Torah or go sleep there. But you don't have to eat specifically in the sukkah except for the first night. Okay? All right, 62. Idan, why don't you take it away?
Eating in the sukkah.
Eating in the sukkah, yeah.
As we have learned, it is a mitzvah to reside in the sukkah as one resides at home. And since proper meals, seudot keva, are usually done at home, such meals must be eaten in the sukkah. However, people sometimes eat light meals and snacks, achilat a'i, when not at home. Therefore, one may eat achilat a'i outside the sukkah. Those who are meticulous make sure to even eat an achilat a'i in the sukkah. They also do not drink anything, even water, outside the sukkah. However, this is not obligatory, and even Torah scholars may eat achilat a'i outside the sukkah.
Okay, so you will see some people that say, I don't even want to take a drink outside the sukkah. I'm going to wait until I go in the sukkah. That's a stringency. It's even recorded in the Mishnah that there was some rabbis that made that stringency. But the halacha is very clear that anything that's not a proper meal can be eaten outside. As he goes on to say, fruit, water, juice, you can eat them without limit. And even real food, as long as you're not making a proper meal. Okay, let's continue to the next page. The question, though, is on page 64. Hananel, you'll read for us maybe page 64, section 5. That's chapter 3, section 5.
Reciting the heart of the state the Sukkah. The sages ordained before fulfilling the mitzvah of dwelling in the Sukkah. Once one recite the Barakah of the said the Sukkah. Blessed are you, Lord, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandment and commanded us to dwell in the Sukkah. There are different customs as to when one recites this barakah. According to many reasons, including Reed and Rambam, whenever one enters the sukkah to spend time there, even if he intends only to sit without doing anything, he recites let's say before sitting down, since he is fulfilling a mitzvah. This is the practice of Zeminite. They recite a bracha while standing immediately upon entering the sukkah and then sit. All other communities follows the Renu Tam views, namely that the bracha is recited on eating as it is more central. The bracha on eating then covers everything else that one does in the fulfillment of the mitzvah of sukkah. Even though sleeping is also important, we do not make a bracha over it, since one might recite the bracha before going to sleep and then not fall asleep. Eating, however, is in one control, so it is proper to recite the bracha over it. The question is what type of eating mandates a bracha. According to Ashkenazi custom, one plans to eat an amount of food that makes eating in the sukkah obligatory. They say one who does not plan to eat that much while he is in the sukkah should not make a mistake eating, even if tasting a minimal amount of food or wine. If one has no intention to eat at all, many have the custom not to recite the bracha, but some have the custom to recite the bracha even when just spending time in the sukkah. This is the proper practice.
Okay, so you'll find that he says it's the Yemenites, but also the Gaon of Vilna, the Vilna Gaon, who's very influential posek for the Ashkenazi world. He also said the standard is, you know what my wife knows, that I try to stay away from snacks, cakes and cookies, because I'm watching my weight. But on Sukkot, we always have to have cookies. Why? Because let's say I leave the sukkah and I go to shul, and then I come back into the sukkah, and then I go out to the store, and I come back to the sukkah. Every time I enter the sukkah again, I want to hang out there, I want to sit there, I want to learn there, I want to talk to friends there, whatever it is. I like to do it in the sukkah. So I'm fulfilling a mitzvah, right? But the question is, can I say a bracha? Most poskim say we only say the bracha when we eat. So eating means I've got to eat something. So usually a mazonot qualifies. And so I end up eating a lot of cookies or pieces of cake, because you want to be able to say the bracha leishev basukah. This is a chumrah, of course. Some poskim say, the fact that you're going to be sitting there for 5-10 minutes, that's enough. You don't have to eat something as well. But most Ashkenazim are machmir, we only make the bracha if we're actually eating something. This is the common custom, I believe. So let me just clarify though. What's the bracha? Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu leishev. How do you say to sit? La shevet. And what do you do when you're sitting around and learning Torah? You're sitting Torah in a yeshiva. This is called a yeshiva. It's a place for sitting. Leshevet, yeshiva. It's the same words. Leishev. We said to settle somewhere is called lehit yashev. To settle down somewhere, to become make a settlement. Lehit yashev. They all have the shin, bet, and I guess the third letter of the root is a hey. Shin, bet, hey. It's interesting, here we are, we're before Yom Kippur. Some people say that the word teshuvah is connected to Lashevet. to sit down. But lashuv also, usually it's understood that the root has the same letters, but it's shin, vav, vet, shuv, to return, as opposed to yeshiva, I think it's shin, bet, hey. So leishev is the way it's pronounced in the bracha. Leishev basuka. Okay, this is the phraseology. If we turn the page, we go to some of the more laws. According to the Ashkenazim and some Sephardim, one recites the bracha over the food first. So I'd say, Borei minei mezonot, and then I'd say leishei b'sukkah, and then I eat. Since the eating that obligates us to sit in the sukkah, the bracha on the food comes before the bracha on the sukkah. And we say it while we're standing, you don't have to. While we're sitting, you don't have to stand. So a custom of some Sephardim is to recite the bracha of leishei while standing and then sit down. And everybody should keep their custom. Okay, as long as you're still sitting there, and you forgot to say the bracha leishei b'sukkah at the beginning, as long as you're going to remain in the sukkah and you've been eating or drinking something, you can recite it then.
Yeah, my question.
Yeah.
It says here in the source number 6, according to Ashkenazi and some Sephardim, Meir says the bracha over food first, then followed by leishei. Isn't it like an interruption because you?
Yeah. Right. So, in the footnote, he must relate to that. The custom is that if they're all connected to each other, like the bracha leishei b'sukkah is connected to your eating, so it's not considered an interruption.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Let's see what in the footnote he says. No, he doesn't deal with the hefsek question. But let's see. Let's see if later on. No, he doesn't deal with that. Okay, sleeping. 69. Here we go. This is the tough one. Sometimes it's less comfortable to sleep in the sukkah. Eating. Okay, you eat twice a day, 3 times a day. 4 times a day. Okay, so you go into the sukkah and you have a meal. But let's say, sleep. He says here on the top of page 69. Okay, Pinchas, you want to read for us in the section 7?
Sleeping on the body in the sukkah. Sleeping in the sukkah is obligatory. When one is going to sleep for the night or taking a nap.
Do you hear that? You see the Hebrew words? Sheinat keva or Sheinat arai. Who remember the words keva and arai? Keva is permanent or proper sleep, and arai is the impromptu food. So here it's the impromptu sleeping. It's just a short nap. It's not a proper sleep, right? So the halacha is different. When it comes to food, we said you only have to eat in the sukkah for achilat keva. But for sleeping, the halacha is more strict. Even sheinat arai has to be done in the sukkah. Go ahead. In this,
sleeping differs from eating. Achilat ari that meet the outside the sukkah because people stay outside the home and all year long. Sleeping is stricter because even Shanat Ari is significant. As even a short nap can be refreshing, and people generally do not like outside the home. Therefore, even Shanat Ari must be in the sukkah. Some people tend to dozing off unintentionally while traveling or giving lectures. This type of
what? You think somebody ever falls asleep in sheer? Yeah. What about if it's Sukkot? And you're going to a Torah Shir lecture on Sukkot. So he says, go ahead, this type.
This type of the voluntary closing of the is not considered like early and is not prohibited outside the sukkah. The difference between the case is clean. In the case of Shanghai, Ali, one put his head down on a desk or some other spot in order to sleep for a little while. And many people are careful not to sleep like this in public. In contrast, one who is dozing of afternoon wishes to remain awake for hours of you want to be turning and just a week feel different.
Okay, so the question is, this issue of sleeping in the sukkah is very strict. Some people find it very difficult to sleep in the sukkah. I'd say most Jews have, most Orthodox Jews don't sleep in the sukkah. Question is why? It's even more strict than eating. So we have to go a little deeper. We're not going to do that right now. Bottom line is, I believe a lot of that had to do with the climate. In hundreds of years, Jews were in colder climates, and it was just you'd get sick if you slept outside, and it's maybe that became the custom to be lenient about sleeping. But now that we're back in the land of Israel, it makes a lot of sense that we should try once again to sleep in the sukkah. This sleeping is a very big part. You look at now there is this issue that we said if it's raining, you're called mitzta'er. Mitzta'er means you have pain. You're pained by sleeping by being in the sukkah. You're patur. So what constitutes pain or discomfort? So if you take a look on page 70, number 8, and the second paragraph, it says, a mitzta'er is exempt because the mitzvah is to reside in the sukkah as one resides at home during the year. Just as one would not reside in a place that causes him pain and discomfort, so too on Sukkot, he's not obligated to dwell in the sukkah if it causes him discomfort. True, a sukkah is a temporary residence, and therefore by its nature it's not as comfortable as a house. The lesser comfort does not exempt someone from the sukkah. So this is precisely the mitzvah. But when an additional factor causes staying in the sukkah to entail pain and actual discomfort, one is exempt. The most common case is rain. Now, beyond that, it's hard to define how much rain. If you look to the next page, 72, if a large number of flies or mosquitoes are in one sukkah and he has no way of getting rid of them and they're causing him pain or discomfort, or if there's a bad smell in the sukkah, or if it is extremely hot in the afternoon, cold at night, or windy, and clothes are not enough to alleviate you discomfort, if his discomfort is severe enough that if it were to happen in his home, he would move into a significantly less comfortable place he has nearby, he is exempt from the sukkah. Okay? So, we can see that it's a variable definition. How much pain is too much pain that you got to get out of there, and you're not going to... So, I think this is also, if you look, it continues to read, it says, some wind. In a situation where particularly sensitive people suffer discomfort, while most people do not, for example, when a wind blows some leaves from the schach onto the table, the people in the majority must remain in the sukkah, while those who are sensitive are exempt. Personally, I found that I'm very wind sensitive. For many years, I had the custom, because now I'm so excited, I'm in Israel, I'm not in Canada. I can sleep in the sukkah. So I would sleep in the sukkah the first night and the second night. And then I noticed, every year I'm sick by the third night of sukkah. I have a cold. So there's no mitzvah to make yourself sick. So usually I don't sleep in the sukkah. Because me, in particular, I know that I get sick. I tried it a few times. Sometimes I push myself, oh, it's a really nice night, it's really not cold out, and it's no wind, and I can. So, it's a little bit variable. It's very, very hard to put your finger on. But most people are not as finicky as I am when it comes to catching a cold. So, now look at the top of page 73. Top of page 73, some people can't sleep when the lights are on also. If it's a Friday night, you can't turn the lights out. Maybe there's another reason. But, I can sleep with the lights usually. If you look at the second paragraph, if one is exempt from sukkah because of discomfort, entailed by eating there, for example, when it is raining, but he nevertheless insists upon eating there while being rained on, he's not performing a mitzvah. Rather, he's doing something foolish. There's even a sinful aspect to it. For one wants to honor the festival and is forbidden to cause oneself suffering on it. Interesting. This is the standard approach. It's even based on the Gemara itself. Somebody who sits in the sukkah when he's not obligated to, he's a fool. You're not fulfilling a mitzvah anyways. Why are you getting yourself rained on? You're getting yourself all wet for no good reason. However, the Jewish people love Hashem so much, and they want to do the mitzvot so much, that there is a custom in some Hasidic groups, in particular, who say, I don't care if I'm a fool. I want the mitzvah. I want to sit in the sukkah. And they do it even though it's raining. It's not the standard halacha. Standard halacha, it's foolish. And he quoted in the name of Soloveitchik, and apparently he learned it from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Apparently he said, it's usher to be stupid. It's an interesting concept, because which one of the 613 is it? As far as I know, there's a prohibition to eat pork, there's a prohibition to violate the Shabbat, but is there really a prohibition to be stupid? But this is a tradition that...
If we travel to other side, other side from outside of Israel, no sukkah.
Why not? You can build a sukkah anywhere. If it's too cold, you're saying?
No sukkah.
If you don't have one, build one.
We travel.
When you're traveling, yeah. So that's actually coming up. I think there's a law. Are you allowed to travel on Sukkot? Yeah, it's coming up in a few pages. He's going to talk about travelers. Okay? There, we'll get to it in just a few minutes. Okay, so you see here, page 73, number 10, as we've seen, it's an obligatory to sleep in the sukkah. Both Shenat Keva and Shenat Arayat. Many are lenient and do not sleep in the sukkah. Do they have a basis for this practice? The poskim mentioned two primary reasons for exemption from sleeping in the sukkah. One relates to mitzta'er, and one to married men. As we said, we don't have to read it again. In the European countries, it was just too cold. And that reason seems to fall by the wayside for most people. Not finicky people like me, but for most people, if it's nice weather out, you can sleep outside. So you should sleep in the sukkah as much as possible. And then, if you look to the next page, 74, there are some finicky people that simply cannot fall asleep in the sukkah. They feel tense, and whatever it is. And if the afternoon nap, you want to take a nap in the afternoon, the children playing noises disturbing you. So yeah, it's mitzvah, you can go inside. The second reason is, some people say, is that most people they don't have a private sukkah. Let's look on page 75. Okay. Lechatchila, a married man. Go ahead, Yosef. Will you read for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Lechatchila, a married man must build a sukkah where he and his wife can both sleep. Even though women are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah, a woman who sleeps in the sukkah fulfills the mitzvah. Moreover, if the spouses sleep separately, it diminishes their festival joy. Thus, it is proper to build a sukkah in which both spouses can sleep. Above Hakchavot. If it is impossible to prepare a place for the wife to sleep in the sukkah, for instance, if the sukkah is too small, or there are other men who need to sleep there, and they cannot build another sukkah for just the couple, and the couple is mitzta'er when they sleep apart. Some say that men may sleep in their bedroom at home. This is because the mitzvah of sukkah is for men to sleep in the sukkah in the way that he normally sleeps in his home, which is with his wife. If they cannot both sleep in the sukkah, he is exempt, according to Rima. Others say that the man is exempt only if the couple are truly mitzvah when they cannot sleep in their bedroom.
Some couples, I'm happy if he goes to sleep somewhere else. Yeah, right? Go ahead.
Still others say that married man has the same obligation to sleep in the sukkah as a single man. And even if he is mitzvah from sleeping in the sukkah, apart from his wife, he is still obligated to sleep in the sukkah. Only on special nights, such as when he and his wife will fulfill the mitzvah of having marital relations with regularity to which they are accustomed, is he exempt from sleeping in the sukkah. In practice, if one is truly mitzvah when he sleeps apart from his wife, he must invest effort and money into building a sukkah where they can be together. If it is very difficult for him to do so, he may, if he wants, rely on those who are lenient and sleep inside.
So you can see there's some variability, and that's why the practice, I would say, is that there are different communities. Some communities, it's standard. Of course, all the men go sleep in the sukkah, and the women are sleeping inside. And some places, the men sleep with their wives. They go inside the house, and sleeping in the sukkah is something that was, it's in the books, but it's not really so practical in many, many cases. Okay, travelers, let's skip ahead to page 77. Pinchas was starting to ask about travelers. Yes?
So if the wife is during the nida, so the man is obligated to sleep in the.
It's a good question. It doesn't necessarily only have to be about physical intimacy. Some couples like to sleep in the same room, even if they're in separate beds. It gives you a sense of comfort and company, and you feel together, even if you're not actually touching each other. And so it's not only related to actual physical intimacy. There is, of course, a range of poskim, as he writes. Some people are machmer, and they say, that's not a good excuse, even though it's brought by the Ramah. The Ramah himself brings this as pretty much what we're trying to do here. The poskim have, throughout the years, have been trying to justify the custom. The custom came first. People did not sleep in the sukkah for hundreds of years. Now, there's two major reasons which the rabbis could think of. One is that it's just too cold, and you're mitzta'er, you're in pain or discomfort, and you're patur. And the other reason that the Ramah raised was, there's being separated from your wife, which is pain and discomfort. That's not normal. You have to sleep in the sukkah. You have to dwell in the sukkah like you normally dwell in your home. But if to dwell apart from your wife, that's not normal. Some couples, you're going to sleep on the couch tonight, right? If they're fighting, but we don't want to be the couples that are fighting. So ideally, you're sleeping together in the same room, whether or not you're having relations. You sleep together, whether or not it's in the same bed. At least you share a bedroom. That's what's called normal couple life, and so you're supposed to live like a normal life in the sukkah. If you can't do that, then you're patur. So those are the reasons that the rabbis came up with for the custom. Here in Israel now, we come back to the land where the mitzvah were intended for. It actually is much more practical to sleep in the sukkah, but we're still married. We still have that issue. The issue of cold is not as pressing for most people, but there's still some issues. Sometimes it could be hot, it could be flies, and we're a little bit finicky nowadays. And the issue of being with your wife, that's still an issue. So there's some poskim are machmer, some poskim are mekel, and there's room for both. I don't think I'm not really one to talk because personally I get sick usually. I try as much as I can. If I have a very protected sukkah, maybe I'd be able to more. Ideally, that would be best. All right, let's move on to travelers. Pinchas, why don't you read page 77, number 13.
Travelers and those who get the mitzvah. One lives alone perform mitzvah such as standing patiently in the hospital. Example from Sukkah, there is a general example that one who is engaged in one mitzvah is an example from another mitzvah. The order of thinking or walking to a Sukkah may impart his fulfillment of the mitzvah is already getting. Even if there is a Sukkah nearby, if there is a concern that he will not sleep, will there. He should sleep, for where he will sleep best wherever he can.
Okay, stop there for a second. So this is the basic halacha. Ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. If you're engaged in one mitzvah, you're exempt from the other mitzvah. So if you're going to care for somebody sick, you don't have to do any of the other mitzvot. If you can do both, then in general, we suggest that you do both. You might even be obligated to. But if you can't, he goes on to say, if we turn to the next page, soldiers who are on guard duty, they're patur. Of course, nowadays, we have a very Jewish army, and they make sukkah on every base, and as much as possible, we have to allow the soldiers to eat in the sukkah. But if you are traveling, you don't have a sukkah with you, take a look on page 78 at the bottom, second paragraph from the last. Similarly, if one must take a business trip on Chol Moed, to avoid the loss of a significant amount of money, and it would be troublesome to find the sukkah while traveling, he may eat outside the sukkah. If he's traveling by day, he's obligated in the mitzvah sukkah at night. However, if putting up a sukkah traveling to one will take hours and harm the goals of the trip, he's exempt at night as well. It depends on the conditions, of course, but in principle, the exemption is there. If you're traveling, and this is even if you're not doing a mitzvah, you're traveling for business. The fact that you're traveling means you don't sleep in your normal home, so you don't have to sleep in a sukkah either. The halacha is there. It's on the books that if you're traveling, you're patur from the sukkah. Now, it's only 1 week, and we love the mitzvot so much, we don't want to miss out. I mean, I know maybe some people, if they're traveling, they would make sure to only have fruits and vegetables, not have bread. If they know they're not going to have a sukkah, so at least I won't eat a permanent meal, a set meal outside the sukkah. But sleeping, you have no choice. You have to sleep sometime during the week if you're gone for a long time, and that's allowed. That's allowed because you're essentially, travelers are exempt. Okay, what did we say at the beginning of the first class? I think I said that the sukkah is not jail. Just like you live at home. But you're allowed to go out, you leave your home to go do different things. While you're out and about doing things, you're obviously not going to have a sukkah. So you're exempt. We're machmir, if possible, if you can make a sukkah, if you can eat only in the sukkah, that's best. But essentially, you are exempt if you're traveling and you can't get a sukkah. Now the question is, what happened now? What's the primary time for traveling in Israel? Sukkot! People are on vacation with their families on the holidays. And so people go on a tiyul to the Golan, they go on a tiyul, they go to the zoo, they go to the parks. People here like to hike. Hiking is a national sport, more than any other, I would say. It's not like that in all countries. America, I think baseball is the national sport, right? In Europe, what they call football or soccer, right? That's the national sport. In Israel, well, it's changing a little bit. People really are getting into football. But essentially, the national sport is hiking. So people who want to go and enjoy with their families, they'll go out to nature and they'll go out on a hike. Now, if you're on a hike, you don't have a sukkah. If I stayed home, I would have my sukkah. Am I allowed to go out on a hike when I know that I'm not going to have a sukkah there? This is an interesting question. Can you put yourself in a situation, well, while I'm traveling, I know I'm patur. That's the law, that's the basic rule, that if you're traveling, you don't have to have a sukkah. But on the other hand, you don't have to travel. It's not like you're going to lose money on a business deal or something. You're going to celebrate with your family. Maybe you should only take a day trip. Go out with your family for a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, so that when you need to eat, you can come back and eat in the sukkah and sleep in your sukkah. Well, some people try to solve the problem by having restaurants put up sukkah. Now in every town around Israel you can find a sukkah. So you could travel and be in a sukkah. You could travel, make sure that every time you stop to eat or to sleep, you're going to have a sukkah there. But sometimes it's impractical. You want to go on a special route where there is no sukkah. Are you allowed to take that trip on Sukkot? Let's see, page 79. Stephen, will you read for us?
Outing. Families who want to go on an outing need to plan ahead so that they can eat their meal in the sukkah. If they decide to go somewhere without the sukkah, they should make sure not to eat suda kibbah during the trip. Rather, they should make do with fruit, vegetable, and little bit of menzano above section 5. Some disagree and maintain that when traveling, one may eat even suda kibbah outside of a sukkah. Just as during the year, one who is traveling is not meticulous about eating in a house under a roof. So too on Sukkot, a traveler need not take care to eat in the sukkah. Nevertheless, it seems that being lenient in this case is not appropriate. Only someone who is compelled to travel is exempt from sukkah. Someone who decides to go on a pleasure trip is making a conscious decision to neglect the mitzvah for no compelling reason, so he may go on the trip only if he take care to eat also the kibbah in the sukkah.
Go ahead. Now this is an interesting comment. He says, what do we do on Sukkot? We all know what we do on the first day. It's a Yom Tov. We go to shul, we eat festive meals, we have a nap, we learn Torah. We know what we do, but what about the whole week? We're going to learn a little bit the laws of Chol Moed, but important comment here, go ahead. As a rule,
One should make sure not to waste all Hamoed.
Page 80 for everybody who's following along. Go ahead.
On outing. As these holidays are meant for Torah study and festive meal, as I have written elsewhere, half the day should be dedicated to God, that is spent on study and prayer. And in Halakha Moedim 10 verse 6. The reason that Malakah is forbidden on Chol HaMoed is to enable Torah study. Yamin Moed Katan 2 verse 3. When one devoted the holiday to his own pleasure, God said to him, "These are not my festival, but rather yours." About such people it said, "Your new moon and fixed season fill me with lufting. They have become a burden to me. I cannot endure them." Yeshayahu verse 1 to verse 1,
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1, verse 14. However, those who dedicate Chol HaMoed to Torah, prayers, and festive meal are beloved of God. Shelah, Sukkah, Ne Mitzvah 31. Some trips have a mitzvah element. One example is visiting one rabbi when he does not see on a monthly basis. Another example is visiting Jerusalem in order to enjoy his courtyard. Some come close to the Temple Mount to pray at the Western Wall. This is a quasi-fulfillment of the mitzvah to make a pilgrimage to the temple. Medineh Halakha, Moedim, chapter 1, 16 to 17, chapter 10, verse 6. When people are on this type of trip, it is difficult for them to find a sukkah. They may eat suda kebab without one.
Of course, when you go to the old city nowadays, every store, every restaurant has a sukkah outside, so there's no problem getting a sukkah even when you're visiting Jerusalem. But as I said, it is a family activity to take trips and to travel and to see Eretz Yisrael. I'm surprised he doesn't really mention that appreciating the nature of the land of Israel is a mitzvah, and it's worthwhile, even if you might not be able to fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah in the ideal way. Something else I was going to say, but I forget now.
If you have a countryside house, can you use this as a sukkah?
Well, what's the roof made out of? Really, what makes a kosher sukkah primarily is the schach. Sukkah is the same word as schach. So if you have schach on top of the roof, then it should be a kosher sukkah. But what you're describing to me seems like you have a country house. Country house usually has shingles on top, or it has a roof. If it has a roof, then it's not a sukkah. If it has a regular permanent roof, that's not a sukkah. It has to be made from inorganic material that are not susceptible to tumah, as we learned way back before the break. So you can go to your summer house, go to your vacation house, and build a sukkah next to it, and then eat your meals there. Why not? That's fine. Sounds nice. Do you have a summer home somewhere? Are you inviting us? We're all going to come by. We'll have a nice little gathering.
It's too costly.
Oh, yeah, it is expensive. Well, you're all invited out to my house. Pinchas, the first day of Chol HaMoed, everybody, the other classes too, the Machon Meir English department, we're all coming to my sukkah in Tekoa. I live in Tekoa, just south of Jerusalem, for a barbecue.
This means the second day of Sukkot.
The second day of Sukkot, that's right. The first day of Chol HaMoed.
Outside of Yerushalayim?
It's outside of Yerushalayim. Not far, but it is outside of Jerusalem, yeah. Yeah.
Question about Ushpizin. Is it okay to go like in the, let's say, friend's house randomly without being invited, or you have to inform
That's a good question. Yeah, no, I think it depends on the culture. But I think in Western culture, usually you don't go to people's houses uninvited. Sometimes if he's your friend, then yes, but the custom of having guests is a big part of it's one of the traditions of Sukkot. But usually those guests don't eat much. Right? The guests we're talking about is Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. Right? The supernal guests. They come unannounced. Whether they everybody grab a siddur, please. Grab a siddur, please. I'll just show you inside a little bit. Look, turn to page 825. 825. This is a special meditation in the sukkah. Prayer when you enter the sukkah. I only say it once. I say it once at the beginning of the festival. And it reminds you of why you're sitting in the sukkah. You can see the second paragraph says, we're inviting these guests. Sit, exalted guests. Sit, holy guests. 824, everybody have it? Page 824?
Yeah.
Sit in the shade of the Holy One, blessed be He. Worthy is the portion of Israel, is written for the Lord's portion of His people. And then on the next page, page 826, is something that I say every day, usually when I eat, when I start my meal, both at night or in the morning, whenever I'm going to eat a meal, I invite the holy guests. Azamin, Azamin, Azamin Nisudati, Avraham, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. This is we mention each one. We mention all of them on each day, and then on the first day, we focus on I pray you, Avram, exalted guest. And all the other exalted, they sit here with me and you. And the second day, you invite in Yitzchak. I pray you, Yitzchak, exalted guest at all. And then we mention all of them, all the others. So we always have all of them, but each day we invite one in particular. That's the ushpizin of the day, the guests of the day. Ushpizin, that's what it's called. Nice custom there. On the last day of Sukkot, you have a little special Su'udat Preida. In the last paragraph there on page 826, may it be your will, Lord our God and God of our fathers, that as we fulfilled the commandment and sat in this sukkah, so next year we have the privilege of sitting in the sukkah made in the skin of the Leviathan. Did you see who came? Did you see who's here? We'll talk about it later. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Anyways, this is a nice sort of to say goodbye from the sukkah. We do that at the end of the 7th day of Sukkot, before Yom Tov. Usually we have a little bite. We say the last bracha, Asher Kidshanu Mitzvah Tzivanu Leishev B'Sukkah. Turn back to page 822 now. 822. If you're going to have trouble finding it in your Siddur, here in this Siddur they have it as part of Kiddush. Because when you start Kiddush for the festivals, as you can see, there's the regular Kiddush, and then at the end of it, there's an extra bracha, second last bracha on the page, 822. Asher Kishanu Tzitav Tzivanu Leishev Basukkah. You see the one I wrote on the board? Leishev, to dwell in the sukkah. We say that during the Kiddush, we're about to have a meal, so for the meal. And every other time that you eat a meal in the sukkah, according to most customs, that's when you say the bracha once again. Leishev Basukkah. If you didn't leave, if you're in the sukkah all day long, the one bracha covers you for the whole day. Even if you go out to the bathroom, it's fine. If you go out for longer than a half an hour, if you go to shul or something like that, you go to minyan and then you come back and you sit in your sukkah again, then you would have to make another bracha as you start to dwell in the sukkah once again, every time there's a serious hefsek. Okay, so I showed you shpizin, I showed you the bracha. Of course, you're going to be very familiar with Tehillim, chapter 113 through 118. What's that called? Tehillim 113 to 118. Turn to page 790. Aha. See that? It's Psalm 113, 114, 115, 16, 17, 18. Okay, that's the Hallel. The Hallel pretty much is these passages from the Tehillim 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections of Tehillim. That's called, what we call it, the Hallel. It's called Hallel HaMitzri because the second passage mentions B'tzeit Yisrael Mitzrayim. And as you see at the top of page 790, when do we say Hallel? Yosef, read it for us.
On the first 2 days of Pesach in Israel, on the first evening and day. Shavuot, the entire festival of Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah. Hanukkah, full Hallel is said.
So the entire festival of Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah. We say the Hallel. That's 8 days in a row, ladies and gentlemen. This is the headquarters. This is the most Hallel we have. Well, in the Rambam, where are the laws of Hallel? Where do they appear? Not in Sukkot. The Rambam understands that Hallel is a rabbinic mitzvah. And so where does he put it? Where else do we say Hallel for 8 days straight? Chanukah. The laws of Hallel are in the laws of Chanukah in the Rambam. But anyways, the second headquarters of the biblical holidays, of course, Sukkot and Shemini Atzeret, we say the Hallel, the full Hallel, 8 days in a row. You're going to be very familiar with it. Hey, everybody see where I am on page 790? Turn one page back. What happens right before that? The blessing on the lulav. Why? Because essentially, as we're going to learn now about the lulav and the etrog in the remaining time that we have 2 more days, 2.5 days, 2.5 classes. Pinchas, this is just the classes on Wednesday and Thursday. Today until 10:45, and then Wednesday and Thursday. So we have to cover all the laws of the 4 species. But when do we make the blessing on the lulav? Usually it's right before the Hallel. Essentially, what this leads us to understand is that, like, when you want to sing to your beloved, there's a romantic thing to play music, right? A minstrel comes and sings, and there's a musician. So if we're singing Hashem's praises, we should use musical instruments. Some people use musical instruments. There is an instrument that we use to praise Hashem. It's called the lulav, and the etrog, and the hadas, and the arava. We raise them, we hold them, we wave them as part of our praise of Hashem. That's the most basic understanding of what the lulav is. Where God commands us to take these instruments and use them to sing Hashem's praises. And so that's why we hold it during the lulav. And we make the bracha on it right before we're about to say the Hallel, right before the Hallel. And as you can see on page 788, there's a nice paragraph, introduction. I don't know who says that too often. We take the lulav and etrog 6 days out of the 7, but maybe only the first time people say the whole intro. Then we say the bracha towards the bottom. You see it? Baruch atah Hashem. Al netilat lulav. What does netila mean? Does anybody know this word, this bracha? What other bracha do we use the word netila? Netilat yadayim. So what does that mean? So netila means lifting up. We actually we don't say we're washing our hands. We say the bracha al netilat yadayim, lifting up the hands. And after we wash our hands with the water, we lift it up so that the water doesn't spill. If we have tamei water, which didn't get clean, then it'll make our hands tamei again. Anyways, the custom is we lift up our hands. And after netilat yadayim, that's why it's called netilat lulav. We lift up the lulav as well. The mitzvah is actually fulfilled if you just lift it up. You don't have to shake it. You don't have to wave it. Just holding it, lifting it up, is the mitzvah. So we make the bracha, and the custom is to give the shakes, as we're going to see in just a minute. And the first day that we take the lulav, we add another bracha. Shehecheyanu. V'kiyemanu higyanu laziman hazeh. For the first time, we use the lulav. Now we're going to learn more details about it. There's some fancy handling of the etrog, upside down, and what's forward. So we'll start at the beginning. I just wanted, once we have the siddur open, I wanted to show you it in the siddur. That's where it appears before Hallel. Now, if you're ready, we can begin chapter 4. The 4 species, chapter 4, and chapter 5 is the details about what we do with the lulav and etrog. Chapter 4 are the rules of what makes a kosher, 4 species, and there's a lot of rules, but it's somehow summarized here in one short chapter. And then chapter 5 is the more practical details about how we shake them and what we do with them. And hopefully we'll get through at least the major parts of chapter 4 and 5. Okay? Let's start from the beginning. Idan, take it away.
The mitzvah of the 4 species of Atayim, meaning on Sukkot, there is a mitzvah to take the 4 species, etrog, lulav, palm branch, hadas, myrtle, and arava, willow. As we read, on the first day you shall take the fruit of the hadar tree.
What's that? What's the fruit of a hadar tree? That's the citron. That's the etrog. Yeah, go ahead.
Branches of palm trees.
Which one is that?
Lulav.
Lulav, yeah.
Boughs of dense leaf trees.
What's that? hadas,
and willows of the brook.
obviously the willow, the arava, yeah.
And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in 7 days. Vayikra 23:40. The Gemara elaborates, the fruit of the hadar tree refers to an etrog, branches of palm trees to lulav, boughs of dense leaf trees to hadassim, and willows of the brook to aravot. Since the lulav is the tallest of them all, the mitzvah is referred to as taking the lulav, and the bracha recited is, who has made us holy through his commandments and has commanded us about taking the lulav. Al netilat lulav. On a Torah level, the mitzvah only applies on the first day, as we read, on the first day you shall take. Only in the temple precincts are we commanded to take the lulav each day, as we see from the continuation of the verse, and you shall rejoice before Hashem your God 7 days. In practice, since there is a mitzvah to go up to the temple on the 3 pilgrimage festivals, in temple times many Jews perform the mitzvah of lulav for 7 days. After the destruction of the temple, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ordained that the lulav should be taken for 7 days everywhere to commemorate the temple. Such commemorative practices are very important, as our sages tell us that by remembering the temple and continuing to observe the mitzvot that were observed there, we help to restore what was lost with the destruction and exile and hasten the redemption. We take 1 etrog, 1 lulav, 3 hadassim, and 2 aravot. In pressing circumstances, we take just 1 hadas and 1 arava, while one does not recite the bracha. If any one of the 4 species is very small, it is invalid. The minimum sizes are, an etrog must be at least an egg's volume, the spine of the lulav must be at least 4 tefachim long, hadassim and aravot must be at least 3 tefachim long. There is no maximum size, as long as one can carry them by pleasure. We will expand on these laws later.
Okay, that's the basic idea. So we have 2 major mitzvot on the holiday of Sukkot. One is Sukkah, and the other one is the 4 species. 4 species. The question is why? Sukkah, we said, well, it's machlokot, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva, to commemorate the clouds of glory or to commemorate the actual huts. And essentially, it's to commemorate the exodus from Egypt. Hashem provided us protection and care, and we appreciate his benevolence. But why do we take the 4 species? The Torah says you should rejoice with them, right? That's what we read. So that's why I made the original connection. It's connected to the Hallel. We're happy, and maybe when we're happy, we're praising Hashem. But there are other explanations, other elements, themes. And that's due to some of the laws of these 4 species. Let's start. Next section, section 2. Yossi, you're on now, please.
Expressing the unity of the Jewish people. In order to fulfill the mitzvah, all 4 species must be taken. If any one of them is missing, the mitzvah cannot be fulfilled. The hatilah, they should be taken together. The lulav bundled with the hadassim, and aravot. However, b'diavad, if someone took them seriously,
Serially, yeah. One after the other, yeah.
He has fulfilled the obligation. This halakha teaches us something profound. Our sages say that just among the 4 species, there are 2 that produce fruit, the lulav and etrog, and 2 that do not, hadas and arava. So too, in Israel, there are 2 scholars and people of
Torah scholars, yeah.
Torah scholars and people of action. Just as the presence of all 4 species is necessary to fulfill the mitzvah, so too the presence of both scholars and doers is necessary for the nation to thrive. Scholars cannot survive without doers, who help support them, and doers cannot survive without scholars, who enrich their lives with spiritual content and help them to the next world. A more elaborate midrash explains that the 4 species represent 4 types of people. The etrog, which both tastes and smells good, corresponds to the Jews who are full of both Torah and good deeds. The lulav, the date palm, whose fruits taste good, but which has no smell, corresponds to Torah scholars who are full of Torah who do not perform many good deeds. The hadas, which smells good but has no taste, corresponds to people who perform good deeds but are not Torah scholars. The arava, which has neither taste nor smell, represents simple Jews who do not have much Torah or many good deeds. At first glance, we might think that their lives are not worth that much, and that they will be unable to reach the next world. But God says, bundle them all together, and they will atone for one another. When this is done, God is exalted, and the supernal chambers are built up. As we read Amos 9:6, He builds His chambers in heavens when He bundles is established on earth.
When His bundle is established on earth. So we have to make a bundle, aguda. We say it in the prayers on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Ye'asu kulam aguda achat. May all of creation make one bundle, make one unity to serve Hashem. So there's an element of unity of these four species that we need all four together, of the various different kinds. And you'll be hearing probably a lot about this idea that there's different kinds of Jews. And we live in an era where there's more diversity than unity, perhaps. And we need more unity. And it's hard for us to appreciate that even Jews who don't have Torah and don't even do mitzvot, there is one species that's they're compared to. And we need that species too. We need all Jews. Okay, you got that metaphor? There's even... reminds me a little bit of the four sons on Pesach, right? Chad Chacham, Chad Rechasha, Chad Tam, Chad Sheino Yidei Lishol, all the different various kinds of Jews. There we're talking about teaching them the story of the Exodus, the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. But here, it's also Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, maybe. And we have to approach Hashem with all of the species together and bundle them together. It's a nice idea of unity. Additional symbolism. Okay, go ahead. The Torah links the principle of hidur, beauty, to the etrog. You'll see.
Which both taste and smell good, corresponding to the wholesome people who both study Torah and perform good deeds, and thus alluding to the wholesomeness that will be achieved in the future. As we will learn, we are more meticulous about the hidur and the magnificence of the etrog than we are about the other species.
Okay, we're going to see. We won't have time to read all this now. You can read it afterwards. We have to get into some of the halacha, so you know how to buy one. Sometimes you can buy one pre-checked, and so you get one that you know is kosher. It comes closed in a box, and a rabbi certified this is a kosher etrog. But we're going to see some of the details of that. The etrog gets the most attention because that's the one the Torah says pre-eitz hadar. Hadar means beauty as well. And so a lot of emphasis is put on making sure that it's very clean, there's no ugly black spots on top of the fruit. And we're going to see the halacha clearly defines what's considered to be a kosher lulav and a non-kosher. Kosher etrog and a non-kosher etrog. So we're going to go through the four species now, each one, and we're going to see how the halacha defines what's a beautiful one and what's one which is not so beautiful. Okay? 5 categories of disqualification. 5 types of things which could make it very bad. Okay, number 1, I'm on page 86. The species which the Torah specifies and no others. Okay, it's got to be an etrog and a lulav. If you take an apple and an orange, it's not kosher. That's pretty obvious, right? Second one is they must retain their natural form. So if the leaves of the lulav grow only on one side, or if most of the leaves of the hadas or arava have fallen off, you just have a stem. That's not an arava branch. It's not a hadasa branch. So it's got to be, the natural form, retaining the natural form. Number 3, there's a requisite size. We already said before that if it's smaller than an egg, the etrog is not kosher. And so too, there's a size of a branch, which is considered to be big enough. We're going to see those requirements, and those 3 are critical. Those 3 are critical. If it's not an etrog, you're not going to be yotzei. And if the lulav is too small, it won't help you. But the last 2 criterion at the bottom of page 86, they might be kosher even if they're not ideal. Number 1 is they must possess hadar, beauty, aesthetic pleasantness. That is, they've not lost their natural form of beauty, for example, by completely drying out. Right? So a dry etrog from last year, it's all dried out, that's not hadar. And most poskim invalidate specimens that lack hadar only on the first Yom Tov. Others say invalidates them for all 7 days. So if when push comes to shove, if you only have the last year's, maybe you could get away with it the other 6 days, not the first day. This year, the first day, we don't use that lulav and etrog anyways. So you could be lenient this year more than other years because this day, the first day is on Shabbat. And the last criterion is they must be whole. It has to be whole. When it comes to an etrog, you can't take a bite out of it. It's not kosher anymore. And all the others, for example, the lulav, that's why people are looking at the tip of the lulav. Is it cut off? If it's broken off, it's not whole. And same thing with the tip of the lulav, the aravan, the tip of the hadas. It has to be a complete specimen to qualify. And there's a lot more details. But if you look in the second paragraph on page 87, it says, even though most of the specimens on sale are kosher, that's here in Israel nowadays, Jewish practice is to enhance the mitzvah by choosing beautiful specimens. The Torah says, this is my God, and I will glorify him. Anvehu, ve'anvehu, naveh, which the sages expounded to mean, beautify him, beautify yourself before him with mitzvot, make a beautiful sukkah, beautiful lulav, na'eh, hit na'eh, na'eh sounds like naveh. Of course, is from the Shirat Hayam, from the Song of the Sea. We say it every day, but according to the sages, this refers to a mitzvah to beautify the mitzvot, to enhance them. And so we outdo ourselves. We mentioned with the sukkah, we put up decorations. And with the lulav, we make sure that it's very special and very green and as kosher as can be. Okay. There are additional disqualifications, but now we're going to look at the details. We'll go one by one. I have some pictures here. And there's some pictures in this book, but we don't have enough for everybody. Here, this is from Masechet Sukkah. We said the book in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, and the Talmud's explanations of it, which the first 2/3 of it cover the different types of Sukkot. As you can see, the last third actually relates to the 4 species. We have pictures of, here's an etrog with a bite taken out of it. We just said that's not kosher, right? Chaser, it's not whole. Then there's the lulav, the arava, and the hadas with the tip chopped off. It's not kosher, it's not complete. We're going to see some more details of the rest as well. Here is the binding. It's the common custom as we use these special baskets. You don't have to have the special baskets. You can just take a string and wrap it around and it's kosher. To bind together, obviously we can't bind the etrog. Etrog's a fruit. It doesn't get bound with the other 3. But the other 3, ideally, we bind them together if possible. This is a funny example. This is not a willow. Looks like a willow, but it's not a willow. It's another type of tree. What's it called? Tzaftzafah. I think it's a poplar, and some of its leaves look similar, but it's not a willow. It's not kosher. We're going to see some more details of the types of lulavim and etrogim, which are kosher, in the coming 2 days, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay? So we'll stop here for today, and we'll get into the details of all the 4 species, and I'll give you some pro tips on where to get yours for a good price, and even to do an extra mitzvah at the same time. We'll talk about it tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay.